common multiple? Numerator, denominator, fraction. How can you compare fractions? Think about this question during the lesson. Shauna walked 5/6 of a mile. Tom walked 3/4 of a mile. Which is greater, 5/6 or 3/4? What are some words that are a signal for you to compare numbers?
How do you know that you need to compare? What in that lets you know that you're going to be comparing fractions? Corinne?
Which one is larger?
Yes. Which one is greater?
How would you compare these two fractions? You would compare the numerators.
Because they have the same denominator, I can go ahead and compare them. I can tell which one is larger and which one is smaller. When you have the same denominators, you then just look at the numerators. 2 is less, 4 is more, and so 2/7 is less than 4/7. Or we could say 4/7 is greater or larger than 2/7.
Can you compare the numerators of 3/4 and 5/6?
Can we compare the numerators? Not yet, because the denominators are not the same.
No, because the denominators are different. What symbols do you use when you compare numbers? When you compare numbers, you use the following symbols: less than, greater than, equal to. When fractions have different denominators, what should you do before you compare them?
So we need to make them have the same denominator.
When fractions have different denominators, you should write them as equivalent fractions using the least common multiple, LCM, or a common denominator. One way you can find the least common denominator for each fraction is by writing the multiples of each denominator. What are the multiples of 4 and 6? Let's use 12 as the common denominator.
Okay,
What will the numerators be?
so if you look at this, they wrote out all the multiples of 4. So 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, and so on. And they listed multiples for 6. 6 times 1 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 6 times 3 is 18. They found the least common multiple. They found the smallest number that 4 goes into and 6 goes into, and that's 12. And so 12 can be your common denominator. But sometimes you may encounter two denominators, and you may think to yourself, I'm not sure what they both go into. Another way to do it is to multiply your denominators like this. If I'm not sure what 6 and 4 both go into, what common denominator to make, I could take 6 and times it by 4 to get 24. I could take 4 and times it by 6 to get 24. And so then my common denominator would be 24. Okay? But there is a smaller number, 12. Either way, I'll still have a common denominator for both of them, and I'll be able to compare my fractions. And we'll talk about that a little more when we do our notes.
The numerators are 10 and 9. Multiply the numerators and the denominators by the same number to get the equivalent fractions.
What you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So when you take 6 times 2 to get 12, you're also going to take 5 times 2. Take your numerator times that exact same number. That's how they got 10. To get 12 for 4, they have to multiply it times 3, so they're going to take the numerator times 3 to get 9. Now it's both in 12ths, so we can tell which one is larger and which one is smaller by looking at the numerators. 10 is greater, 9 is less.
Now compare the fractions. 10/12 is greater than 9/12, so 5/6 is greater than 3/4. Another way that you can find a common denominator is to multiply the denominators. What is the answer? You can use 24 as the common denominator. What will the numerators be?
So here, they got a common denominator by taking 6 times 4 to get 24. They did that to the numerator and got 20. They did the same thing. They took 4 times 6 to get 24, did that to the numerator and got 18. So they can still compare them. You're still going to get either way, the larger fraction will be the larger one, and the smaller fraction will be the smaller one. Using a different denominator is not going to change that.
The numerators are 20 and 18. Now compare the fractions. 20 24ths is greater than 18 24ths, so 5/6 is greater than 3/4.
So 5/6, we took that and changed it to 20 24ths. 3/4, we took it and changed it to 18 24ths. This one right here, the 20 24ths is larger. We started out as 5/6, so really 5/6 is more than 3/4.
Shauna walked a greater distance than Tom. When might you want to use the second option to find a common denominator? You might use it when the denominators are small and easy to multiply. Now you know how to compare and order fractions.
So the first thing to remember, first of all, 9-5. So the first thing to remember, in order to compare fractions, you have to have a common denominator. So, to compare fractions, get a common denominator. So that's just saying the bottom number in both fractions has to be the same before you can start comparing. So let's take a look on page 230 where it says another example. Another example. It says write 2 and 5/12, 11 12, 3 and 1/6, and 2 and 1/3 in order from greatest to least. So we have some fractions in there and we have some mixed numbers. So 2 and 5/12, 11 12, 3 and 1/6, and 2 and 1/3. And they want this in order from greatest to least. First of all, guys, I need to do something with these mixed numbers, okay? I'm going to change them into a regular fraction. It may be an improper fraction for a little bit. That's okay. I need to get them so that they have also the same common denominator. All right, so we're on page 230, example number 2 is what we've skipped on to. And so we have 1/4 and 2/3. We can't compare them just by looking because their denominators right now are different. They have to be the same. And so what would you change the denominator to, Alex?
12, because 3 times 4 is 12, and that's the lowest.
You're right, it's the least common denominator. And so we're going to take 1/4, the top and bottom, times 3. And when we do that, we get 3/12. We're going to take 2/3 and multiply numerator and denominator by 4, because that's what we have to multiply 3 by to make it a 12. When we do that, we get 8/12. Now we can tell which one is greater, 1/4 or 2/3. Claire? Claire Longy. 2/3. Yes, 2/3 is greater than 1/4. Next one, number 3, says order the numbers from least to greatest. We have 2/3, 1/4, and 9/10. The directions say from least to greatest. Very common mistakes. When mistakes are made, it's because people ordered them wrong. Okay? Least to greatest. Always know what you're doing. If it's least to greatest or greatest to least. And so we have 3, 4, and 10. We need a common denominator between 3, 4, and 10. Okay, so we did some work and we found out that a common denominator between 3, 4, and 10 is 60. Not 16.
Oh, I think
16 is 60. And so for a 3 to become 60, we're going to have to multiply it times 20. And 2 times 2 is 4 with a 0. 3 times 2 is 6 with a 0. So 2/3 has just become 40/60. We said 4 times 15 gives you 60. And so 1 times 15 is 15, and 4 times 15 is 60. We know that 10 times 6 is 60. We do the bottom, we do the top. And 9 times 6 is 54 over 60. Now, we can order our original fractions from least to greatest. Least would be 1/4. Then 2/3. Then 9/10. You need to order the original numbers you were given, not the new numbers you found. Use the new numbers that you found to determine, okay, if they're the least or the greatest. But when you order them, you still use the original numbers. That's why, guys, it's really important in this process to use neat work. Keep track and organized. Same thing, this time we have mixed numbers. The directions wanted an order from least to greatest. First of all, you should be able to pick out right away which one's our greatest, Lawson. 2 and 1/4. How did you know that? The what? The whole number. They each have a whole number. 2 is the largest, so I know that 2 and 1/4 is my greatest. So it's going to be the very last one. Whenever I write my final answers in order, it's going to be the last one. Everybody get that? See that? Okay? Because it has the greatest whole number, so it's the greatest. So we can eliminate that one from our list. We already know where it is. So we right now need to determine what place is 1 and 2/3 and what about 1 and 9/10. And so we look at our denominators here, 3 and 10. And so we are going to ask ourselves, well, what's a common denominator? 30. What do I have to do to 2/3 to make it 30? I'm going to multiply it times 10. So then I'll have 10/30. What do I do to 9/10 to get 30? I multiply it times 3. And when I do that, I get 27/30. So, because 27/30 is greater than 10/30, I know then that 1 and 9/10 is greater than 1 and 2/3. So, 1 and 9/10 is greater than 1 and 2/3. So when we have them in order, it should be 1 and 2/3, 1 and 9/10, 2 and 1/4.